In 1967, when Israel regained control of Jerusalem, they began to excavate under this area, an area that hadn't been excavated since 70 AD. Underneath the streets of this modern Jewish quarter, you get a very good feel what life would have been like in Jesus' day. Let's go down. This is the first century of Jerusalem, underneath the modern Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. This place is amazing. After Jesus was arrested at the Garden of Gethsemane, he was brought up to the home of Annas and Caiaphas. This is the largest of the homes that have been excavated up in this area. And so it's very likely that it could even be this home. It's kind of a good thing that it had been under a pile of rubble, because they would have built a church over it and called it like the Church of the Denial. But they interrogated him up here in order to find a reason to take him to Pontius Pilate so the Romans would execute him. The courtyard is just 25 feet away. So Jesus was right here, and Peter was right here. You don't have to be an all-knowing God, although he is, in order to know that Peter was denying you. All you have to do is be able to hear. This is why Jesus had some unfinished business after his resurrection. He wanted to deal with Peter. I'm at Tabqa. That's a corruption of the name Heptapagon, which means 7 springs. In this northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee, there are 7 springs that flow into the lake. And because it's warmer water and more mineral laden, it produces a lot of vegetation. It means that this area is good for fishing in the winter and the early spring. The disciples no doubt did a lot of fishing in this area. I think Jesus had a lot of fun after his resurrection. Acts 1 verse 3 says that after his suffering, Jesus showed himself alive to these men over a period of 40 days with many convincing proofs. Jesus had unfinished business, and one of those was Peter. He told them to go to Galilee, and he would meet them there. While they were waiting, 7 of them said, "Let's go fishing. Let's get into their real world." Fishing methods on the lake did not change from Jesus' day until modern times, including the fish species that formed the commercial fishing industry on the lake. Only in the mid-1960s did the indigenous fish decline and new species were introduced, so we have a pretty good idea of the methods used by Jesus' disciples and what they caught. In Jesus' day, there were 10 commercially important fish divided into 4 different groups. The first was catfish, but since it has no scales, it is not kosher, and therefore it was important only to the Gentile population on the southern end of the lake. The second group is the Kinneret sardine, or the Galilee sardine, the smallest of the commercial fish, but with really very large economic impact. It constitutes more than half of the yearly catch, and during the time of their run, about 10 tons are caught every night. This gave rise to the pickling process by salting. In fact, the town Magdala was also called Terakia, which means the salting of fish. This was a staple of commoners, and it was the 2 fish, sardines, that Jesus multiplied to feed 5,000. The third group is tilapia. It's called musht in Arabic, meaning comb, because the long dorsal fin looks like a comb. To the tourist, this got renamed as St. Peter's fish, from the biblical story of Peter catching a fish and having a coin in its mouth. That's what you eat when you're a tourist there. It grows to about 15 inches and about 3 pounds. And finally, And importantly for this story, there is a group from the carp family called binies or barbels. Barbels because they have barbs on the corners of their mouth. They are the, quote, large fish of Galilee, reaching 30 inches long and up to 14 pounds. They have large bellies, so they provide more meat, and they serve as the fish dish for special festivals like Sabbath and other feasts. A good night's catch would bring in up to about 200 pounds of fish. Veteran fishermen speak of memorable single hauls during a specific season of up to like 1,000 pounds. Consider that as we think of Jesus' story with his disciples after his resurrection, as he finishes his work with Peter. So while it was early in the morning, Jesus shows up on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and there's mist on the water. The disciples had been out there fishing all night. Now, over the course of a night, you let your nets down and bring them up between 10 and 15 times. Well, they'd done that, and they'd caught no fish. So Jesus yells out, "You don't have any fish, do you?" And they shout back, "No." "Throw your nets on the other side of the boat." As if fish can only swim on one side of the boat. And when they do that, their nets become rich with fish, and they pull up 153 large fish. Now remember, these are not sardines, these are not tilapia, these are the barbels. Now, a good night of fishing, you would let your nets down and up between 10 and 15 times. If you caught 200 pounds in a night, that was a good catch. If you catch 1,000 pounds, that's an enormous catch. But 153 barbels, that's over 2,000 pounds of fish, bigger than they'd ever seen. And John says to Peter, "It's the Lord." And Peter jumps into the water, and he swims the 100 yards to the shore. And Jesus meets him, and it's time for him to take care of his unfinished business. All right, it's time to do the study. So let's open up the Word, do the work, and then we'll wrap up together.